Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSat Network. Friend, as you know, we are having a series of lectures on social thinker. And we will start with Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. And as you know, he is a prime author of the Constitution, but we will not talk about only Constitution, but we will talk about the Dr. Ambedkar's strategy for emancipation. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in the studio Dr. Raj Kumar. He teaches political science at Dayal Singh College. He is associate professor and working on the marginalized sections of the society and their social political movements. So I hope it will help us to understand the very concept and philosophy of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar in present scenario. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. Raj Kumar for the lecture on this very topic. Welcome, sir.
Start.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak today on Dr. Ambedkar's strategy for emancipation. When I say Dr. Ambedkar's strategy for emancipation basically of whom? Dr. Ambedkar has worked in a particular context. His philosophy, his understanding, his actions, his movements were directed towards certain goals in his life. What was that particular goal which we are going to talk today? That goal is basically related with the caste system in India. Caste system which has a history of thousands of years. Caste not just an identity, caste as a category which define and decides destiny of thousands or say the whole India. Because Indian social structure is basically determined by the caste hierarchy. And this caste hierarchy has stipulated or given different roles to the different sections of the society. These communities which are identified by certain names like Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras, they have been assigned different duties and different rights, while few communities or the first three communities have been assigned rights, which is say the Brahmins are supposed to be dealing with education related issues, the Kshatriyas with the political issues was the political power, and the Vaishyas with the economic affairs. But the rest or the last community is given a duty that is to serve the first three categories. So this process has been going on for thousands of years unabated. There have been movements against this kind of a system, this caste hierarchy, but these movements have not been that successful historically. These movements have been limited in their purpose, they have been limited in their success, and most of the movements have been absorbed or say people who started movement against the caste oppression, they have been accommodated into the caste system by the very system which they were against. Say the most of the backward class movements have been accommodated, or they have been co-opted, and in the process they have been corrupted, and the movement against caste become useless or became diluted from its purpose. So most of the analysis and the observations regarding caste and its functioning in India prior to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar have been from the perspective of those who were within the caste system. Within the caste system, in a sense, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Sudras. But Ambedkar belonged to a community which was not related with these four varnas, he was one of the untouchables. So his perspective is entirely different. And why it is entirely different? Because to use the phrase that he was an outsider, he could analyze, observe the nitty-gritties as the most oppressed segment of the society, or as the most oppressed member of the group. He, all through his life, from the very beginning, as untouchables have been suffering a lot of discriminations in the society, he, as an individual, he suffered all through his life, more so in the beginning of his life, or till he was getting educated. And then he realized the problem, realized the magnitude of the problem, and just started thinking over, pondering over that why this caste system is functioning like that, why it has not got decimated, or why it has not been annihilated so far of thousands years. It is going on. And then he, with the wisdom, with the kind of knowledge, with the kind of education he received, he came up with the certain propositions. So when Ambedkar is talking about, or Ambedkar is discuss this strategy for emancipation, he is basically referring to the caste system is not working uniformly for the whole society. There are people who are beneficiary of this caste system, and there are people, larger number of the people, who are victim of this system. Certain people, few people are getting privileges, benefits, and majority of the people are being discriminated, denied their basic human rights. So these beneficiaries and these victims are sort of the contradictory, or the people in in the camps which are opposing each other. So it's almost like a war camps. So far the movements which started against the caste system were coming either from the top, or from the middle, or the lowest of the Hindu caste system. But Ambedkar, having understood the crux of the problem, he thought that reforms will not work, because if a person from second category, or a second varna, is uplifted up to the first varna, he will start behaving in same fashion as first varna is behaving. Or if a fourth varna person is uplifted up to second or third, he will be behaving in the same fashion. So Ambedkar basically wanted to annihilate the caste, to finish it lock, stock and barrel. So that way he came out with a proposition. In 1936 he wrote a piece, a thesis on caste, which is called Annihilation of Caste. And that Annihilation of Caste is basically his strategy how to negate the problems, discriminations, or the exploitation created by the caste and its related institutions. In that perspective, caste became a major bone of contention, or major area of Ambedkar's interest. Because caste was not allowing most of the Indians to live a dignified, respectful life. So what he basically wanted to, and what he proposed to, though Ambedkar is known in a wider circle as one who is associated with the framing of the Constitution, as chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution, and as a legal luminary, but his socio-political, cultural ideas are somehow not have come to the limelight. Through his thesis on caste, we can understand some of his ideas, how he wanted to have an ideal society, a society which is equal and egalitarian to all, and there is no discrimination on the basis of birth, or basis of caste, class, religion, or region. For this, he has proposed three basic commandments. Whenever Ambedkar's name is propounded, or whenever his supporters or his well-wishers try to discuss about Ambedkar, his three ideas are discussed very thoroughly, and these ideas are like he has education, educate, agitate, and organize. What are these three ideas? To me, these three ideas are nothing but his strategy for emancipation of the masses, or the Indian masses, particularly those who are the caste victims, which runs into majority, or say the 75 or 70, 85% of India's total population, because most of the people here are lower caste, lower class people, and they have been suffering from the caste syndrome. So when he proposed education for the masses, what basically he was referring to? Was he referring to? I remember when in 40s, a grant was approved for Kashi Vidyapit and Aligarh Muslim Mahavidyalaya. Ambedkar also wanted some kind of a educational relief from the government for the untouchables, and he went to the viceroy. He wanted kind of a educational grant for the untouchables education, and then during discussion he was offered some schools or some kind of primary education, and then he refused. No, we don't want education at the primary level, but we want certain of some of our young person should go abroad, their fellowship should be funded by the government, and that time probably around 15 students from the untouchable community were given fellowship, and they went to different important universities of the world, and then later on they came back, and this way. So what he basically was referring to as education, he was not referring to education as something which gives you bread and butter, which is means of your livelihood. Education as a complete package which gives you capacity, which enables person to understand difference between right and wrong, to understand his duties and his rights as a human being, what he is supposed to do and what one is not supposed to do. Education is an enabling process by which one realizes one potential. So that way, when Ambedkar was referring to education, he was basically referring to education from a caste victims perspective, from caste victims point of view, that in the society they have been victim of this process, they have been victim of the caste hierarchy, and they must realize that caste is a hindrance, is a stumbling block in their development, in their socio-cultural development, their political empowerment, their economic emancipation. So if they are educated in terms of their social responsibility, in terms of their social relationship. So they must understand Indian system, they must know, they must realize that what Indian system is, or Indian social system is doing to them. If they are through this understanding, if they know the history of India, if they know their place in the history of India, if they know how the system has functioned for thousands of years, then only you have some kind of a education. Getting mere MA, BA, MPhil, PhD degrees is not education, they are just certificates. But if one is empowered through the historical settings in which one has born, that is the real education what Ambedkar was referring to. And here comes the sense of history, sense of responsibility, sense of relationship, and one's particular social cultural positioning in that particular context. So education basically gives you a kind of critical faculty by which you try to understand existing circumstances, existing relationship in the society. It is something which is very powerful, because what we have been generally told or taught in the classrooms is that you understand basic tenets of classroom teachings, where certain texts are taught to you, certain concepts are taught to you, and then you go to the examination hall, you write exams and then are through, and then you become educated, highly educated. This was basically not something which Ambedkar was referring to. And when he was saying that educate, he wanted to single out certain propositions in historical context, that how to perceive caste. Very important proposition which he was trying to make through this intervention was that caste is a system which creates graded inequality. What is this graded inequality in the caste? One cannot understand caste without understanding graded inequality. Inequality is bad. Inequality is problematic. It creates divisions, unequal divisions, claim for unequal resources. But graded inequality is doubly problematic, because everybody is not in one or the other category. You are having something and other person is having something else. It's not like that. But all individuals are divided into thousands of categories which are put over each other in a hierarchical manner. So not just Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishya and Sudras. Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishya and Sudras, but Sudras have been divided into thousands of subcategories, putting one over other. And there are some 5,000 subcategories within the Sudra categories. And all these 5,000 categories, Mandal Commission talks about these communities. There were some 4,300 communities which they have identified, and some of them they have clubbed together. But roughly it is 5,000 subcategories which are put over one another. That way, each community is getting some kind of a solace. Each community is getting some kind of a relief that there is somebody below them, so that they do not have a common enemy. Though the person sitting at the top, or the community sitting at the top, do not have anybody above them, but after them, after the first category, all categories are getting equal solace that somebody is below them, except the last one, which they claim to be the untouchables. Though untouchables officially, culturally, socially, they are not part of the Hindu system, they are not part of the Hindu caste system, but still, for all practical purposes, they have been castigated, or they have been identified as the last category of Hindu system. So the lowest one, the untouchables, and the highest one, the Brahmins. The middle intermediary communities, they have been divided into thousands of categories, putting against. So there has been no common movement against the caste oppression. If within Sudras one community is fighting against another community, then okay, at the most they are accommodated at certain higher level, and that way this so-called process of Sanskritization has basically helped Hindu caste hierarchy in a big way. So Ambedkar wanted to highlight this point through his idea of graded inequality, that graded inequality has not allowed people to be the caste victims to get consolidated, to get mobilized and fight their common opponent or their common oppressor, because of so many internal divisions. So another important point which he wishes to or wanted to emphasize, that this system is not working on its own. This system of denial and discrimination is not working on its own, but it has deep-rooted religious sanctity. This is something very different, very dangerous, in fact. When somebody is, say, practicing criminality, someone is committing a crime, he is committing a crime against law of the land. And when caught, he will be punished. But if somebody is practicing casteism as per one's religion, then there is no corrective measure. And religion is something which everybody aspire for. Religion is something which people fear the most. because religion is related with something supernatural generally in that scheme of the things. So if caste system is religiously sanctioned, which it is, then if a person is practicing caste, he is practicing his religion. So problem is not with that person. So problem is much deeper. It is there, which in the religion itself, and he Ambedkar has no hesitation in claiming that the problem lies with the religion, not with the man who is practicing it, because these religious scriptures are advocating practicing caste system. So this religious sanctity of the caste practice was much more dangerous, and that has to be understood in its totality. So historical, the education must be with this perspective. And caste is also problematic in a sense that it's almost hegemonic. When I say hegemony, caste in its traditional form was deciding each and every moment of one's life from birth to death. All aspects were determined and decided by your caste hierarchy, just not the rituals, but what one is supposed to wear, what one is supposed to eat, what one is supposed to talk. The kind of language one was supposed to talk was determined by the Brahmins were allowed to speak Sanskrit, but others were not allowed not to learn. Even Ambedkar was refused to learn Sanskrit. So this kind of a discrimination, where your food habits, your clothing habits, your shelter, if your homes, your education, your profession, not to talk of profession, your property, your belongings, almost your timings of going in and out of your house, almost everything is decided by your caste. If you are a caste victim, then you are supposed to follow so many disabilities, but if you are a caste beneficiary, then you have only rights. So that way caste was hegemonic. It's at hegemonic at the best, because over a period of time it was internalized by the victims, and they totally subsumed their identity, their respect to the dictates of the power that be. So that way caste was near hegemonic, and there was no there have been hardly any movement against this particular kind of a hegemony, which was probably initially was enforced through brutal physical force, and later on psychologically people were compelled to accept it as their way of life. So it becomes a kind of a destiny for them, and they started believing in their so-called lower caste status, which is something God given or which is preordained. They have no escaping from this powerful system. It was so that way Ambedkar wanted to know these nitty-gritties of caste, and that was something which he wanted as basis of any education. It was education in social relationships. It was education in social history of India. So that way education was one of the major tool of emancipation for him. Once you are through so what basically when caste is playing such a havoc with individual personality, what role individuals are having, the human beings are having, they are reduced to just instrument. They are just reduced to cogs in a wheel kind of a status. They are not supposed to do anything on their own. What they are thinking, even walking, talking, dancing, everything is determined. So there is no scope for any initiative. So human beings were reduced to simple cogs in a wheel status as an instrument. So unthinking, what Rousseau sometimes was referring to, that thinking man is an animal. probably comes very close to this kind of a system where a person was totally denied thinking. He was totally prohibited from thinking on its own, taking anything which is personal initiative. So this kind of understanding was to basically elevate a mass to a human level. It gives a real sense of identity, real sense of culture, real sense of history, that education without understanding your social reality is incomplete. Other than this education, you may have skills, you may have certain professional skills which can be ordained, which can be achieved through certain trainings and institutes. So he moves on to the next step, and then he propounded the theory of agitation. After education, he says agitate. What is that agitation means actually? When he is saying agitate, generally we say this agitation is kind of a building movements, mobilizing masses and fighting against the ills. Something of that kind probably comes to our mind, and that too comes our mind in a collective endeavor. But Ambedkar has something very different in his mind when he is saying the agitate. What he is trying to say, that once you are through your education, you become an informed individual. You become a individual who has knowledge of his surroundings, who knows what is right and wrong, how things are happening in the society. So a person who is informed, a person who has got certain social courage, now cannot lie down, and as an empowered individual, his behavior is going to be different what it was supposed to be in a system when he was not educated. Now he is the one who has acquired, or who is trained trained to become a perfect human being. So he started behaving that way. When he starts behaving in a meaningful way, in a way which corresponds to humane level, then obviously it's a kind of a agitation. It's a kind of a agitation against the existing socio-cultural norms, which do not allow him to behave in a humane way. That way he start discarding the caste hierarchies. In that way he start discarding the caste relationship. In a way he start behaving in a non-casteist fashion. He start refusing the duties, so-called discriminations assigned to him by the power, that be socio-cultural or political power. So he starts after getting proper education, he start behaving in a non-casteist fashion, which actually is kind of a beginning of destruction of the caste. But at individual level it may be okay. When you confront a system individually, system will bounce back, system will counter you. So how you are now going to save yourself? Because if system is so powerful, which has not allowed you for thousands of years, then you have to have a counter strategy to overcome that problem. Here comes the role of movement. That once you start behaving in a fashion which is very democratic kind of behavior, others will start liking you, others will also follow the suit. So not just the particular individual, but your personal individual and endeavor will help others behave in a same or a meaningful manner. So a solidarity comes. in a office, in a factory, or in a social setting, if one refuses to behave in a casteist manner, the others are bound to take notice of it, and those who are beneficiary of the caste system, they are supposed to counter it, but those who are victims of caste, they are supposed to advocate it. So a solidarity start coming up that way. System of a system, a network is created, and here when Ambedkar talks of annihilation of caste, it becomes kind of a social phenomenon, it becomes kind of a collective endeavor of the society. Most of the people starts behaving in a casteless fashion, and this is something which has to do with the so-called sanctity given to the religious scripts, because when you are behaving in a casteist manner, so many irrational obscurantist practices you are doing, which cannot be explained. But now you have started questioning those things, like when Ambedkar was discussing this point, that one must take the route that Buddha took, one must take the route that Nanak took, or Fule took, because these of discarding these shastras, discarding these smrtis which advocates casteism, because caste is something which crosses your path every way. You must have that courage, you must have that conviction to discard it. If you are discarding those sanctities, scripture sanctities, then you behave in a liberated manner, you behave in a manner which is according to humane credentials. So this is something in a first stage of agitation, where you have kind of a negating destruction kind of a thing, when what Buddha talks about deconstruction and construction. So annihilation of caste or agitation has two stages: one where you deconstruct the caste identity, deconstruct the caste relations, deconstruct the caste institutions, and then positively on second part in agitation, you have to build a solidarity of the people, solidarity of the masses against the caste system. Here comes the next stage, or the next phase of the agitation, which is socio as well as political agitation. And Ambedkar here was referring to that these caste victims must come together politically. They must become the ruling community of this country, because they are bigger in number, and in democracy it is number which matters. There is no force on the earth which can stop them becoming the ruling community of this country, given the mammoth size they have in this India's population. This particular aspect of Ambedkar going for political empowerment has its genesis in his thesis of agitation as a means of or as a agenda of action, that what basically these groups will do. So he proposes kind of a political empowerment. Here two important points which can be made, that what he was referring to is that the caste victims must take leadership of this country. They must become rulers of this country. When Ambedkar say leaders does not mean just the political leaders in all aspects of life. Because if you see the history of India for last 2000 years, after Buddhism was eclipsed sort of, so there have been hardly things which India can be proud of world over. In academics, in science, in industry, in society, almost our contribution is not up to the mark. Even in contemporary times, we are sort of very low in that list. So the caste victims who have immense potential for excellence, they have immense desire for excellence, they have immense need for excellence, they must be given chance to enter into the main or the mainstream, and when I say they must be given the chance, Ambedkar was very clear that nobody is going to give them any chance. They must acquire it. They must capture the center stage. And political democracy is an instrument which gives you ample space to make positive intervention. So through their sheer number, they can elevate their individual being as well as their collective social being and country at large, because their expectations are very high, their needs are very high, their desires are very high. Because of their low substandard livings, nothing is there in their hand right now, so they have an inbuilt desire to excel, and that way they have they must become the central figure of anything which is happening in India. So this leadership naturally should go to them. And another point which which is quite important in Ambedkar made, that all communities so far which have fought against the caste system were either say the Kshatriyas or the Baniyas or the Sudras. They have some kind of a accommodating tendencies. They were accommodated because there was somebody below them, but the untouchables as such do not have anybody below them, so they have a natural interest in destroying the caste system, because when there is no one below them, until unless they destroy the whole edifice, they destroy the whole structure, that their problem are not going to be resolved. So they have a inbuilt interest in destroying the system. That's why they have more revolutionary zeal, they have more revolutionary aspirations in comparison to so many other movements against caste, and that somehow explain why the earlier movements against caste have not been successful to the level they should have been, because somewhere the need was missing, the need for the total transformation, the need for total emancipation. Because if a fourth rank Hindu is accommodated as a second rank Hindu, then his quench was sort of a satisfied to that level. But if an untouchable is fighting, then he cannot be accommodated in the system, because their socio-cultural understandings, their socio-cultural practices are entirely different than the so-called Hindu scheme of things. So untouchables as rulers, or the Dalits as we call today them as rulers, will have different meaning altogether if they come to the center stage. And in this scenario, the politics becomes very important. Politics become very important because economically they are quite weak, socially they are oppressed. What else they have at their hand except the numbers, except the political instruments? So very fast they started learning use of political means in their quest for emancipation, their quest for liberation from the historical yoke they have been suffering. So this agitation is twofold kind of a thing, where at the beginning they have to deconstruct the old caste system, which is supposed to be the annihilation of the caste, and the next stage it has to have consolidating communities, bringing people together, which have been divided into thousands of subcategories. They must come together, start behaving in a political fashion, start behaving in a democratic manner, not accepting caste hierarchies and other related issues, and must become political agents of change in terms of social emancipation and economic emancipation. So this once behaving in a casteless fashion starts giving you political lessons automatically. So if you are fighting against caste oppression in an office, you naturally becomes a leader over there. People starts accepting you as one who can fight against injustice. So this agitation is basically a initial stage of having a full-fledged transformation or emancipation of the masses. And now comes the third important yardstick, or third important instrument of emancipation, or the last instrument of emancipation which Ambedkar talks about, is organization. Surprisingly, a lot of people get confused when they recite Ambedkar's commandments. Educate, agitate, and organize. Organize comes at the last stage. After agitation, it comes the organization. Why it has taken third place? He was very clear that these communities which have been oppressed for thousands of years cannot and must not struggle perpetually. They have to have success in this life itself. They must end their discrimination now and here. They cannot keep on struggling, keep on agitating continuously. Once they establish their human democratic credentials by their individual personal behavior, others will start following them, others will start behaving in same fashion. In fact, when Jyotiba Phule refers to this agitational mode, and he was quite convinced that once you start behaving in a non-casteist fashion, others will also follow you, and if they don't follow you, they will start behaving in a medieval fashion, in the old fashion. They will lose the battle in democratic fight. So that way, your consolidation, your mobilization on your own will give you a very prominent place in the society. This became quite clear, and once you are politically united, once you are socially liberated, economically emancipated, you start behaving as a perfect human being. Now, as a perfect human being, you cannot be that selfish, you cannot be that individualistic, you cannot be satisfied with your individual salvation. You have a responsibility to bring that solace, to bring that liberation to your brethren also, because everybody in the society is not equal, everybody's access to resources is not equal, everybody's access to education and the exposure is not equal. So those who have got certain kind of lead in the society, they must become the role models. Here comes something which is quite missed, that this point of reservation, when Ambedkar was referring to reservation, or he was advocating kind of a reservation, he was not advocating reservation as a means of livelihood, as a means of ameliorating poverty, giving economic help to individuals. No, he was referring to reservation as an instrument of representation to these communities. So certain individual of these communities will become the role models, behaving in a very powerful fashion, behaving in a system which is quite extraordinary, and others, and they will take care of their brethren who are not that much powerful. Others will take inspiration from them, and they will also become equal, or they will also start behaving, or at least will start aspiring to behave in a meaningful manner. That way, these person of positions who have got their glorious positions through reservations or through representations, they must behave like a role models. So because the seats are so limited, everybody cannot be given jobs through reservations, everybody cannot be given economic help through reservations. So those who have got it, those who have been there, they must become a vasto kind of a system and have a meaningful contribution. And that is something which he talks about, and that is the idea of his thesis of paying back to the society, because these individuals who have been there or who are accommodated at that position, they are there not because they are individually very strong, they are individually very committed, or they are very intelligent, something of that sort, but they are there as a member of a particular community. They are representing that particular community over there, so they must take care of those communities on whose name they have been given these positions. If they are not taking care of these communities, they are not paying back to their communities. So all those who have received some kind of benefits, constitutional benefits, they must respond back to, they must pay back to the communities in which they have been, they have come from, or they are born. Otherwise, their being there is sort of a suicidal, becomes meaningless. So this third stage, when you say organization, third stage, these individuals who are now powerful, who have the capacity, who have the resources, understanding, behaving in a fashion which is quite extraordinary, they just cannot be selfish anymore. They cannot afford to, because once you are liberated, it becomes your duty to liberate your brethren. Now they must organize the society. They must organize the society on those lines. They must have that kind of a feeling of liberating fellow brethren, liberating their fellow mans. Here he introduces the idea of Enlightened India, something Prabuddha Bharat, because his ideas, Ambedkar's idea of organization is not limited to certain section of the society. It's not limited to few groups or the communities or the few individuals. He has a vision for the whole India. He has a vision to the great nation called India. So he envisaged something which is called as Enlightened India as his vision of organized India. How this organized India is going to be? He says it has to be a enlightened one. Here, when we say enlightened one, enlightened India, this comes to what is enlightened one? Enlightened one is that individuals are self-sufficient. They know what they are supposed to do. They are not just cogs in a wheel, that they have been prescribed certain duties, certain roles, and they must behave in that fashion. But now they are full-fledged, empowered, informed individuals who have their own personality, integrity, and respect. They can behave in a fashion. So that idea of apadip bhav, self-enlightenment, must come to all individuals in the society, and that should be the basis of organization. That should be the basis of future organization of India. So the India should be reorganized where all individuals are empowered, all individuals are self-reliant. They are not dependent on others. They have something which is their personal, but at the same time there is something common. Because if you are not interested in behaving in a casteist manner, you are not interested at the same time the others should behave in that manner. So if you are human, you want others to be human. That way it becomes very important for you that you must systematize things in principle on those particular lines. So here he introduces the idea of Buddhism as something which is based, because Buddhism is basically apadip bhav, where you become your own master. You become master of your own destiny. So nobody else but you yourself is the sovereign human being. Also, it's very modern, rational, compassionate philosophy. It gives total autonomy to individual the way they want to be, and it's also democratic. It also helps individual realize their personal as well as social goals. So for that, he has another important milestone where he introduced where he gives us the Constitution of India as the blueprint of reorganizing India. Constitution, Indian Constitution, something which works or which should work as blueprint, because he was telling at one point of the time that this Constitution may not work. This Constitution, because it depends on the people who implement it. If Constitution is good, people are bad, Constitution will not work. If people are good, Constitution is bad, even that system will work. So Constitution is good and people are not good, then it may be fallacious kind of a thing. But when you are informed, when you are a righteous person, when you behave in a casteless fashion, then this Constitution is certainly going to function. That way it becomes touchstone of your humane, of your democratic aspirations, how you are going to establish new social order in this country. Maybe the Constitution which was Ambedkar framed, or he was instrumental in framing the Constitution, it becomes quite why right now in this society there is a strong opposition. Even when in 2002 some kind of a constitution review committee was formed, then people, particularly from the marginalized sections of the society, they fought against the government, and they were not interested in having any review of the constitution, because they knew that constitution is there but it had not been implemented. That time the President of India also made a comment that whether we have failed the constitution or constitution has failed us. So that was kind of a thing, because general perception in the masses, particularly the marginalized sections which are in majority, is that constitution is not honestly implemented. If it is honestly implemented, then it has so many democratic content in it, where the mass, it can work as an instrument of socio-economic emancipation in itself, because it has democratic means, and it has socialistic aspirations, socialistic agendas. But these things have not been taken care of. So Ambedkar, when was referring to organization of the society in his last commandment, he was saying that it has to be on the line of Enlightened India, it has to be on the line of Buddhism, it has to be on the line of constitution adopted by the Indian Parliament or the India's Constituent Assembly. That way, a future society, his ideal society is supposed to be based on an egalitarian and sane principles of Buddhism and constitutional democracy, which can be termed as Enlightened Democracy also, because Enlightened Democracy gives space to each and every individual as per one's capacity and capabilities, and it also helps provide justice to each and every individual. Justice in the truest sense of the term, socio-political and economic justice, which is there in our preamble, enshrined in our preamble. So that way, Dr. Ambedkar idea of emancipating masses from the clutches of caste is holistic. It gives us a complete sense of philosophy, ideology and action, or the strategy. It gives us all three instruments. Philosophical background it gives us, it gives an ideology, and also it gives us a strategy how to implement it.
So, well, as you said that from the exploitation to emancipation, what was the goal of Dr. Ambedkar, Bhimrao Ambedkar? Seeing the current situation, what will you comment upon the present status of the different sections of the society, especially in case of marginalized society?
Situation seems to be quite quite positive in a sense that if you see the relative development taken place in the country for last say 60 years, it's tremendous. Communities which were denied access to bare minimum needs, which were not even allowed to have drinking water, not to talk of other nutritious foods, now are aspiring to, or they have gained access legally, politically, sometimes socially also, to the best of the amenities available in the country. So their progress is tremendous, their political assertion is there, nobody is there to deny that. Maybe much more need to be done. And it also explains why Ambedkar says that once they start behaving in a casteless fashion, they will realize their goals. So far, others have been doing things for them.
Okay.
Now they have started doing things for themselves.
Okay. So, well, friends, as Dr. Rajkumar has explained that Dr. Ambedkar's strategy for emanation that is at work and has in positive direction. So, I hope this lecture must have given you also a kind of information and you can say kind of understanding which will help you to understand the Indian society in a new way and will give fillip to the in coming years for the welfare or and betterment of the marginalized sections. So with this we would like to conclude the lecture and I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on your behalf I thank Dr. Rajkumar for giving such an insightful lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you.